doing podcasts. King McClure joins us from ESPN on 365 Sports. King, we've missed you, man. Great to have you on. You're so popular. You're really busy these days. So how does Baylor clear Saturday night second half in time 2 days later for Kansas State tonight?
Yeah, man. First off, thank you for having me. Secondly, I think it just comes down to what Coach Drew would always stress. So when I was there, every single game, no matter if you win a big game, you lose a big game, no matter what happens, it's almost that phrase, short-term memory loss. So it's one game at a time, and as we know, the Big 12 is a grind. I mean, there's no easy game. So, yeah, you had a bad second half against Kansas, but Coach Drew is emphasizing that you have to be able to take that off and bounce back, because if you allow that to affect you moving forward, then you will lose again to K-State, and then that's 2 losses back-to-back, and you can't afford that. It's too late in the season, and this is the time to gain momentum instead of losing it.
Is it kind of fortunate? I don't know. It might be unfortunate, too, because they're playing the guy who knows them best, but is it fortunate that they have Coach Tang tonight in that one, it's one they got to get back from earlier in the year. They know him. There's all that kind of, even though it won't be like it was here in Waco, that emotion in there, and they can easily focus. It's not, Oklahoma again right after.
Yeah. I mean, this time around, it's Coach Tang, and like the first time, all the welcoming back and just all the pleasantries and everything. It's him coming back to Waco for the first time. Now it's business. I mean, you beat Coach Tang and Kansas State beat you at your home court. So now it's time for revenge. I mean, that buddy is all good, but right now Coach Drew and the staff and all the players, I know that they're thinking like we can't lose again to him. We're not going to get swept. So now it's time to handle business and get a dub.
King, first time being able to ask you this since it has been a while since we've talked to you, but what have been your impressions of Chiante George? Obviously came in with a lot of hype months ago, one and done type of a guy, and obviously not a perfectly polished player just yet because he's still so young, but what have you thought of what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I've been really impressed. What I've been most impressed with is he just has a knack for scoring the basketball. He's an elite scorer. He's an NBA-level scorer. Some of the shots that he takes, that he makes, they're pro shots. So we know that he can do that. And early on in the season, he was a really good passer. I mean, as time kind of evolved, he's been focusing more on scoring than really passing and facilitating. But he has that vision, and he can play more of a combo, like point sometimes every now and then, backup point, starting 2 guards. But he's an elite-level scorer. I mean, everything that we knew coming in, he lived up to the expectation, lived up to the hype. And frankly, if it wasn't for Brandon Miller, I think that Chiante George might be the most impressive freshman in the country right now.
Well, I don't know if you heard about this, but we just had the story about Brandon Miller. Apparently is the one that brought the gun to that shooting in Tuscaloosa that involved a former player. And I don't know. Like, I'll ask you this, and programs have had their times, and Baylor, of course, has had their dark clouds, but how does outside noise on something like this, how does it disrupt, or how do you try to keep it from being a distraction, King?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where player-led teams, they're so pivotal in this moment. And honestly, the coach being able to, bring in the reins on this, because a lot of times, when they dealt with what they dealt with, that type of circumstance, I've never dealt with that. I've dealt with other things, but not to that level, not to that magnitude. But the biggest thing for me personally as a player would be, okay, like team meeting, like whatever goes on in this locker room, whatever we talk about first, we have to get out this locker room, and how we're going to handle this, like this is how we're going to do it as a team. I mean, we're going to do this, we're going to stick together. We're not going to allow this to distract us. We're going to focus on our next game. Whatever consequences happen, but we have to handle business. Every single time we step on the court, we have to stay focused. I mean, whatever player is dealing with something, okay, I get you dealing with something, but when you're on the court, let's lock in for at least this hour and a half or this 2-hour game, and then off the court, we'll try to deal with it together. So I was really big on, being a family. I mean, everybody talks about being a family, but I was really big on that. Like, whatever you deal with off the court, we can get through it together. And it's honestly easier if you have your brothers with you.
King, Baylor's surprisingly, I think to a lot of people, not great on defense this year. They're they're good enough most days, but that game against Kansas kind of showed some of their flaws. They are much more of an offensive-driven team this year. How do they get better enough to make that deep run right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the phrase "how do they get better?" I mean, it's almost the season's almost over with. Yeah. So I think who they are and what they have done to this point is who they're going to be. So I don't know if there's that much room to get better on the defensive side. I think adding Jonathan Tchamawa-Tchatchuwa is a major help, and I think that will help them become a better defensive team. I still don't think that they're at the levels of being elite like they once were, but I think that it helps with him back on the floor. I mean, his presence, his talking, his energy just helps so much. Now, the biggest thing for Baylor is they have to just make shots. If they aren't making shots, it's going to be a rough night for them because they are heavily offensive driven. I mean, that's just who they are. The three guards, they live and die by the three. They're great on the offensive side, but they have the offense has to be clicking every night in order for them to be successful.
What was that like to see everyday John come back from your point of view?
Man, it was a great thing to see. I got to see how hard he was working during the off season when I would come down there and work out with him. Just saw how much he wanted to be out there. Every single time I would go up there, he was in the gym lifting, working, putting up shots, whether he was sitting in a chair or he was just doing spot shots without even jumping, just shooting free throws or something. You could just tell how much he wanted. And, you know, a kid like that just really respects the game and brings that type of energy that you need. I mean, the energy he plays with is infectious. And you can tell when you watch it on the TV screen what he brings every single time he steps on the court. So to see a guy like that get injured and then for him to make this return and still bring that same level, you just have to respect it. And I was overjoyed for him to be able to finally do what he loves again.
He is one of the nicest, sweetest individuals you're ever going to meet, but are the guys on the team a little bit scared of him because of, like, he's going to outwork you? No matter, like, if you're in the gym and, you know, kind of half-assing it and he's there on one leg shooting free throws for 3 hours, does that kind of make you like, I better pick it up?
Yeah, no, for sure. It definitely makes you pick it up. And if seeing that does not motivate you as a player, then you're playing the wrong sport and you're at the wrong school. So seeing John work every single day should honestly motivate and inspire the players and make them want to be better because you have to live up to the standard of excellence that he brings. I mean, even when you see the way that he plays the game, how hard he plays every single time, that should make you want to match his energy. And sometimes you see it as it does, sometimes you see that it doesn't. But he's one of those guys that he leads by example. I mean, he's vocal every now and then, but he's definitely a leader by example.
King McClure, former Baylor guard, ESPN Basketball Analyst with us on 365 Sports. King, a defense is a commitment, right? Isn't that something either you have that in your head or you don't?
Yeah, for sure. I think defense is just a matter of effort and want to. That's the biggest thing. I mean, when I was coming up my freshman year, I remember Coach Mills used to point me out in the film session and tell me that I couldn't guard a soul. And I basically talked about how bad of a defensive player I was. So for me, it wasn't a matter of working. I mean, yeah, I did a few things like defensive slides, and I did a few things to like really help as far as like getting in the weight room with Charlie. But the biggest thing for me is like, okay, I want to guard. And the reason why I want to guard is because I'm tired of Coach Mills. I'm tired of Coach Tang. I'm tired of all the coaches, Coach Drew, constantly bragging on my defense and telling me that I can't guard. So my senior season, I finally got to a place where I was an elite defender and I could really, really guard because I wanted to and because I was tired of all the coaches telling me that I couldn't do it. So, yeah, I think that defense is really a want-to type of thing.
King, this league is really deep and really good, and we talk about it all the time. How deep of a run or how many teams do you think could make a serious deep run out of this Big 12?
Oh, man. It's crazy because I think this is the first year where I just have no idea who I think will win the tournament. I mean, normally you always have a a solid four who you could bet money on will be in the Final Four. And then you might have one or two just dark horses. But this year, I think there's a solid about 10 to 12 teams who could go to the Final Four and really win a championship. I mean, you look at Kansas, the way that they're playing right now, they're playing at an extremely high level. I mean, Kansas for sure. Baylor, I think, has a great chance. Guards win games in the tournament, and Baylor has 3 of them that are just as good as anybody in America. I even think Iowa State, when they're making shots, they're hard to beat. The way that they defend, and when they're on, when Kalsher and Caleb Grill are knocking down threes and Lipsy is able to get into you and cause havoc and really find his teammates, I think they're hard to beat too. So I think that they can make a run. K-State, I feel like they've almost hit a wall in a sense. They've kind of struggled here of late, but I think that if Marquise Noel and Keontae Jonathan can find their rhythm like they did early on in the season, I think they could possibly do it. Texas is a team who, Tyrese Hunter, I forgot the 2 guards' name.
Guard?
What is
Carr?
Oh, Marcus Carr. Yeah, Marcus Carr. Marcus Carr is a guy who is a high-volume guy, but when the ball is rolling, you've seen him this year drop 40. So he can score. They can fill it up. Timmy Allen is just as good as well. I think Texas. I think there's legit 4 teams in this league: Baylor, Texas, Kansas, and Iowa State, who can make a deep tournament run.
How impressed have you been by Rodney Terry, the job he did to make sure the ship stayed upright and moved on along there in Austin?
Yeah, man, you talk about being able to withstand outside noises. Mm-hmm. That right there is a perfect example, and I've been extremely impressed. I feel like there's 2 ways to look at this. You can look at it as, well, the players were already there and they were good enough, so that's why they're having the success. He didn't have to do much, but he's already just coaching good players. But I look at it from more of, okay, keeping these players motivated, keeping these players focused, that's not an easy thing to do, especially when the guy that they came there to play for leaves and is no longer there. So now all of a sudden, a lot of guys, the first thing they're thinking is, oh, where am I going to go to school next year? Especially with the new transfer rule. Where can I go make this money with the new NIL rule? So I think he's done a tremendous job being able to keep those guys locked in and still be able to compete. And honestly, they're fighting for the Big 12 championship now.
King McClure with us, ESPN analyst. Baylor, Kansas State tonight. Texas host Iowa State tonight, and a couple of really important games. Obviously, Texas Tech and Oklahoma think their game's important too. King, thank you for your time. Great to have you on. Continue the best to you and your TV career.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me anytime.
That's King McClure with us on 365 Sports. When we come back.